Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Liv and today I'm going to be bringing you through my journey of reading in January 2021. So far this year I've gotten through a grand total of 17 books so far. A couple of these have been audiobooks, maybe one has been an audiobook actually. I've had one ebook as well, so I don't have it here. But other than that, I'm pretty much going to work you through from January 1st until today. My little reading pattern. I've got my Goodreads app here on my phone, which is where I write down all of my reading notes as I go. But I figure we'll keep this short and sweet because we have a lot of books to get through. Yes. Okay, so we started, I started this one actually January the 27th, but finished it January 2nd, Hamnet and Judith. So this is a book by Maggie O'Farrell. It's recommended by Emma Donoghue, who wrote Room, which is amazing. The cover is stunning, this the gold birds on. And essentially this is the story of two extraordinary people, a love that draws them together, a loss that threatens to tear them apart. So it's set pretty much in Shakespeare's life. He features in the book. He's never named by name, which is kind of fun, like bringing it onto just the other people that made him who he was, who, influenced so many of the beautiful stories that he has told. Hamnet and Judith are Shakespeare's children. The story follows, kind of two parts. Him, Shakespeare and his wife meeting, and then kind of later on in the story with their children. I did find parts of the beginning of this book a little slow to get into, but once I kind of understood the structure, the going back and forth in the time period in the story, I was super enthralled by it. I'm very into it. It kind of culminates with a play, which is just a lot of fun. I miss plays. And so I've said, even if you're not a Shakespeare person, or if you're not super into historical fiction, because I'm not, I definitely would recommend giving Hamnet and Judith a good go. Oh, I'm not doing star ratings because I always hate myself after I've done them. I just feel like I'm lying all the time. Okay, the next book that I read, this one, I think I pretty much sped through it. I read it January 2nd to January 4th. It is Bunny by Mona Awad. I actually already pre-ordered her book that is coming out, All's Well, later on this spring, but this book was wild. One of the weirdest things that I've ever read. I don't know if this is the weirdest or if Perfume is the weirdest, if you know what I'm talking about, you know. So this was like the Heathers movie, crossed with Mean Girls, crossed with Perfume, and then like jacked up on steroids. It was a wild ride. I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote this, but I said it was literary acid. Should be a book critic. So this book pretty much, if you know the Heathers and Mean Girls and everything, you kind of figure it's set in a school. The bunnies are these like kind of a clique of girls who were like nothing else that I've ever read. They're in this kind of like prestigious literary group, class, I guess, kind of like in The Secret History, but they're mean girls, which is just more fun to read about than nerdy boys, in my opinion. But the relationship between Samantha and Ava was everything. This book was witchy and it was gory and it was like very, very shocking. Like the first time the thing happens, I had to go back and like reread the whole chapter because I was like, did I get this book wrong? Like what's going on? But I'm also just like the prose was absolutely stunning in this book. It was beautiful. It was very satirical. It was very cynical. It was very terrifying. It was so bizarre. A wild ride. Would definitely recommend this. Got this from the library. Thinking of maybe buying it. We'll see. Okay, the next book that I read was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I love Leigh Bardugo. Like everybody on the internet I loved Shadow and Bone. I loved Six of Crows. I'm so excited for the TV show to come out this year. But I hadn't read this yet. I got it for Christmas. Again, set in school. Alex is part of Yale University. She came from like a pretty wild background, dropped out of school early, lots of drugs, all of that. Honestly, I didn't know a lot about this book going into it. Okay. Honestly, I didn't know a lot about this book going into it, other than that it's creating kind of like anarchy on the internet. Like people say mean things about it, people love it. I'm very excited for book number 2 eventually, but this was like a mystery, thriller, fantasy, dark academia, basically all of my favorite things wrapped up in one little book. I didn't realize it was like a murder mystery kind of vibe. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler until I started it. And I did find the little beginning again a little bit slow as I was just kind of getting into the structure of this book, but in my opinion, the ending totally makes up for it. Super down. The Alex in like the last fall timeline versus the winter timelines sections felt like two totally different characters to me. But the writing was so like detail oriented. You did kind of feel like you were there. Felt really, really grounded in the setting, even though like it's not a very grounding book. Like it's fantasy, right? It's all stuff happening. Just like in Bunny, kind of want to join a weird university secret society. So yeah, maybe. Super, super, super stoked to read the sequel eventually when it comes out. I want more of Darlington. I want more Yale. I want more of this world. I want more romance in this book. The romance was very like low key, but I for sure enjoyed it. But yeah, book was very dark. Definitely would recommend looking into like the trigger warnings associated with it before giving it a go. But if you're into a little bit of dark fantasy, then yes to this book. It started the year so well with reading. Up next, another library book, The Tin Man. So this is a gorgeous piece of writing, set actually in Oxford, which is why I wanted to read it, which is where I'm from. I will touch on this again later, but I always find it so weird reading books that are set in like the place where I live. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I know that street. That's where like the Burger King is. It just feels weird. But the book itself was like gorgeously written. It was about like love and loss and character and very lyrical, gorgeous writing. Like I felt a lot for the characters in this book. There's not a lot of them. Felt very deeply for them. The story itself is like very, very simple, and the book is short. Like it's under 200 pages, I think. Yeah, it's like 193 pages or something. So it's very, very short read. Read it in one sitting, like January 10th to January 10th. Overall, I wouldn't read this again. I remember I wrote down that the story was beautiful and sad, but if you asked me to summarize it for you now, I couldn't really do it. But yeah, Tin Man by Sarah Winman. Up next, White is for Witching. This book I've wanted to read for so long, ever since I heard about it last year. I think it may have came out last year or maybe 2019. But White is for Witching by Helen Amy. It was a wild ride as well. I just feel like I've had emotions up and down this whole year so far with my reading. This was nothing like what I expected this book to be. I was kind of imagining it to be like that Nicole Kidman movie where it's her and her kids and they're in the house and it's like after the war, but also the modern. I was if you know the movie, that movie, I was kind of thinking it was going to be like that. Like it's set in an old house. Yeah. I like this a lot more than the other book by this author that I've read, which is Gingerbread. But I'm also very glad that I've given up numerically rating the books that I read because I do not know how I would rate this. If, like me, you're expecting that classic witchy haunted house, that kind of vibe, it's not that. This book has a really actually complex POV structure. I think we follow 3 characters plus like the main girl. So we've got Elliot, Ore, and the house, which is a narrator, which is, I don't think I've ever read a book like that before. I should look it up, but that was pretty unique. And then also Mary. I had to write down on my bookmark like kind of the key identifiers of each character in this, otherwise I was just a little bit lost. Hard to keep track. Everybody is super unreliable. You're looking for like an experiential kind of read, really immersive, I would totally recommend this. So yeah, that is White is for Witching. Super fun. Okay, up next, a classic of 2020. I can't believe I didn't read this last year. Red, White, and Royal Blue, baby, by Casey McQuiston. I feel like most people kind of know what this is about. The cover is super kind of obvious. This is about the president's son and the Prince of England. People loved this book. I enjoyed this book. It was a fast read. Again, I read it in 2 days, January 11th to January 13th. But honestly, this whole genre is just a little bit cringe to me. I feel like I was not surprised by any single thing that happened in this book. At not one point was I which is kind of what I hope for in a romance novel. Well, I guess going and knowing that it's a romance novel, it's going to be predictable. I really liked the characters. I loved Alex. I loved Henry. I loved June. I loved Nora. I loved the characters. But I just felt that the entire book, I was just cringing a little bit. I felt a little bit awkward about it. If it was a Netflix series, I would eat it up. I would watch it start to finish, and then I would watch it again start to finish. But yeah, as a novel, bit underwhelmed. After that, I read Uncanny Valley, which is a memoir by Anna Weiner. Also, I didn't know what to expect going into this. I did, my overall opinion, liked this book a lot. Super interesting. It's a memoir of the writer. She kind of navigates being a woman working in the Silicon Valley tech space, which is actually super interesting because I just started working in the tech space as a female customer service kind of person. So I feel like I should have related to her a little bit more. I do kind of feel like this could have been a really, really good long form article. Set up a paywall, I would pay to read that article. The thing, I've talked about this before, but my thing with memoirs is that I always hope for something really dramatic to happen. But then I remember that it's actually someone's actual life, and I also just want them to be happy. So yeah, interesting read. Problems with the genre in general. We're kind of speeding through this. I love it. Okay. Up next. I kind of was thinking of doing my own video about this, but I'm going to wait till I finish the trilogy. Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. I wanted to read this book for so long. It took me almost a month to read. I started it in December 20th and I finished it January 15th. So almost a month this took me to read, but if you don't know about it, this is the first part of the Cromwell trilogy, following Thomas Cromwell, who is or was one of Henry VIII's key advisors back in the day, going to school in England and giving up history before I was 16. I learned a lot about the Tudors. I know a lot about them, but this book still wowed me. For sure, it's a challenging book. It's not the kind of book that you can pick up and scroll through a little bit and, just have a fun little casual read. It's not a beach read, but if you want to spend the time and effort to get into this book, to get into the history of it, it was such a great experience. About this, it does definitely help if you have a little bit of knowledge of the history, the time period. I kind of read this book like I was reading it for a class, somebody was going to be okay, what happened in this chapter? Talk about the themes. So I tracked the themes and I looked up quotes, and if someone's name was mentioned, I was okay, I have no idea who that is anymore. Go back to the front, very, very helpful. They've got their family trees, character lists, you need that. But yeah, I was legitimately like gripped by this book. I wouldn't say I was like surprised by anything that happened in it. Obviously, I know the stories that happened because they're history. But similar to watching The Crown, like you don't know how things are going to play out or when the book is going to end, or are you going to see this thing happen or just hear about it later? You know, that was the kind of stuff that was super exciting for me. Part five is like for sure the most action-packed section of the book. But throughout, like I felt like I was like swimming in Tudor England. Like you could smell it pretty much. It was just stunning. The descriptions were so vivid. And just the deep level of knowledge that and like research that Mantel must have done before writing this book is just astounding. I think that's the thing that gets me the most here. Yeah, absolutely amazing. I'm super excited to start reading book number 2, probably later in February, and then book number 3, I will order it and read it soon after that. But yeah, probably my highlight of the month was this book. I'm just proud of myself, honestly, that I made it through. Okay, up next, another library read. I really utilised the library this month. Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Gillian Flynn? Gillian? I should have looked it up before. Okay, I did not like this book. I did not like it. I thought it would be such a fun, fast read, but I found the main character so annoying. And I found like everybody's name just like started with A. I also find that super confusing. I was so excited to read this, and I loved like Gone Girl, and I love other books like this, like all of those Tara French books. Love them, Tana French. But yeah, Camille Parika was an annoying main character. I did not care about her. So that's that. Sharp Objects. Okay, up next, another fun book from last year. Beach Read by Emily Henry. Again, a fun book. It's a book about love. It's a book about books. There's nothing to really not like. It was just like such a fun vibe. I would say save this book if you're in a reading slump. Like I read this January 15th to 17th, so I read it pretty fast. It's actually longer than I thought it was. It's almost 400 pages. But yeah, if you're in a little bit of a reading slump, you want to pick up something that's light and fun and easy, I would totally recommend this book. It was cheesy, but like knowingly cheesy. I think that's what I liked about it. Red, White, and Royal Blue, just to compare. I found this embarrassingly cheesy. I found this like witty cheesy. They knew exactly what they were doing. Yeah, well, maybe I should give you a little summary in case you're one of the few people in the world who has not heard of this book. So there are these two authors, and this one dude, he writes all this like literary fiction, like bad things are happening in his books, and it's all very serious. And then this other writer, she's like a romance writer, so she's probably Katie McKriston from Red, White, and Royal Blue. So they're super opposite, but then they end up like living next door to each other in these like beach houses, and they're both like broke, and they both have writer's block, and then they decide to switch the stories together. Oh, it's such a vibe. It was so much fun to read. Yeah, I honestly had a really good time with Beach Read. I feel like I should have read it in the summertime, but that's okay. Okay, up next, I read The Rook by Daniel O'Malley. This book surprised me so much. I have the second book on hold at the library right now. I'm going to go pick it up like tonight or tomorrow. This book was long, but I read it again in 2 days. It's about 480 pages, so he's a big one. But pretty much prefacing this book, you have to be prepared when you open it for a lot of just like info dump, because to get into this world, there's a lot of things that you need to know, like throughout the entire book, not just this section is like information and then the rest of it is story. It's like, no, we're learning. This entire book, there's a lot of stuff you need to know. It's done in an interesting way for sure. It's done kind of through these letters that are written to the main character by like her past body. That sounds wild. The info dump explains it all. This book could have been at least 100 pages shorter for sure. Lots of conversations, recapping what we had just seen happen. But that's okay. I loved it. It was really, really funny in a very dry, funny way, like a British funny way. It felt really, really smart, like quick-witted. I love the plot. I love the characters. There was absolutely no romance in this book, which was just like an interesting thing to note, because every book has at least, you know, some kind of semblance of it, even this memoir, you know? But yeah, it's hard to categorize this into like I don't know how I would genre categorize it. This girl in the back says Harry Potter meets Ghostbusters meets War of the Worlds. So, and then this other person on the back says part Bourne Identity, part X-Men with a hefty dose of Monty Python. So, if you like any of those things, I would recommend picking this up. If you don't like any of those things, I would like to know how you find your entertainment. Yeah, okay. Ooh, the next book was The Martian. I listened to it on audiobook. I've only ever listened to one audiobook before, and it was Lauren Graham's autobiography, and it was just like a lot of fun. Autobiographies, I think, are fun to have via audiobook, because you get to hear the person listening. I'm planning on picking up or reading the Obama book next month. I might listen alongside it, I think. We'll see. But yeah, super fun, exciting experience. I never watched the movie before this, so like I knew the premise. Everybody knows the premise of The Martian, but like there were just like loads of fun surprises. The book was funny. It was narrated by Will Wheaton, which I didn't learn until the end, and it was just such a cute little reference point there. Yeah, so that was super fun. Yeah, an excellent listening experience. If you're getting into audiobooks, this one is for sure like a good one to pick up if you don't want an autobiography. Does not make me want to go to space, but definitely makes me want to read the book. Okay, up next, I feel like we're getting through this. I read this. Oh, this one took me a while, about 5 days. But The Book of M by Peng Shepherd. This book, I wanted to like it so much more than I did. This is another library book. I got it out from the library like months ago, and I never read it. It just sat there, and I brought it back so I didn't have to pay a fine. And then I got it out again, and it's been sitting here, and it needs to be returned by tomorrow. And finally, I read it and I finished it. But like this was as 3 out of 5 that a book could get. I'm not rating books, but if I did, 3 out of 5. I enjoyed the process of reading it once I was sitting down reading it, but the actual process of me getting up and picking up the book was just a lot. Like it just took a lot for me to want to pick this book up and read it. There was a lot of jumping around of characters. Usually that's something that I love, but yeah, this I just found it a little bit confusing. The book is about amnesia, and it's kind of a pandemic of amnesia. People lose their shadows, and it's about the main story. The story that I liked the most was Max and Ori, this couple. One of them starts to lose their memory, and it's about like their journey to like find each other. And there's a bunch of stories in there as well. As I got into each character's little section, I really loved those individual characters, but then I feel like we just moved on a little bit too fast, and it was pretty challenging to just really get into. It's like a good read. Totally recommend it if you're into like dystopia and stuff like that, but it just, for me, I wouldn't really pick it up again. Up next, an ebook. I read this on my computer at work because sometimes you need things to read when you have downtime. It was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I also feel like this is a book everybody's reading right now, but I read this in one sitting, like one day, done and dusted, January 25th, a good day for reading for me. It was so good. I just loved it. It made me feel like warm and cozy, but then also sad and happy at the same time. Definitely a good read. It just makes you think a lot about, in a really light kind of way, about like all the tiny little decisions that you make and how that branches up all these like different possibilities of like that you could have, and yeah, an excellent read. Up next, I read Consent by Annabelle Lyon, a Vancouver author. She actually teaches creative writing at UBC, which was, I actually only just learned, but that's pretty exciting. Legit, I picked this book up because of the cover. It is so cool. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. Like, what is this book about? Like, you have to know. And the book is about two sets of sisters. And it's not a spoiler to say this, but one set of each sister is, or like one pair of each sister is gonna die at some point in the book. And it's about kind of them, the other sister, coping with that and like how it affects all their other relationships, and just the different ways that happens. Again, a book that's set in Vancouver, so it's always weird to hear like the Oak Ridge Mall popping up on in a book, because it's not a location for a story, in my opinion. But yeah, it's a short book, and also recommended by Hilary Mantel. Just saw that, that's exciting. It's a short book, it's like 211 pages. There's so much packed into every single sentence here. Like, this is a well-written book. Like no lines in this book are wasted. I feel like if I read it again, I would be picking up on all these different things as time goes by. Don't know if I'll pick it up again in the near future, but probably again one day. It's Consent by Annabelle Lyon. Recommend. Okay, I feel like we're getting close to the end. I've got two more books to talk about. The second last one is Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. I did watch the video about the hate for this book, and I totally understand it. I was watching Jess's video, and she said that there was no cliffhanger. You were just looking at the cliff the entire time. And like, yes, I agree with that. It is so, so true. But I loved that. So the premise, again, similar to Ninth House, similar to Bunny, similar to literally everything else that I read this month. This is set at this like weird, creepy school called Catherine House. And pretty much like the school is super prestigious. So you apply to Catherine House, and it's kind of unclear like how you get in, but once you get in, like, you don't pay anything, you don't pay for any like expenses, they provide all your clothes and stuff for you, and you like, it's a 3-year program, so you do school through the summer, and you're expected to kind of cut off your life from everything that is out, like the outside world, and then you can like pay money or like credits or something to like have interactions. But this book, I loved it. I kind of picked up on what the twist was going to be not super far through the book, I think. But honestly, that didn't bother me. I was so excited to find out how they got there. It reminded me a lot of Never Let Me Go by Ishiguro, which is a book that I absolutely loved. Maybe I'll reread that again this year. That's like definitely a top 10, I think, for me. And people had issues with Inez, the main character. In that they thought she was boring and bland and just kind of like a bit of a caricature of like, you know, a bad girl. Like, she goes off and she kind of sleeps with everybody and she like does a lot of drugs. But I kind of loved following her. I feel like she got way more like humanized towards the end, funnily enough. And yeah, I loved the characters and all the relationships between them. I loved how dark this book got. And I also loved how not that much happened. But then everything happened, but you still don't really have any answers. That's so weird. I feel like in general that would not be something that I would be into at all. I'm hearing myself talk about it and I'm like, probably wouldn't read this book, but no, I loved it. I really want a sequel or like a mini-series or a movie or like interactive gameplay of Catherine House. I just want to go there, okay? I did not want to leave this world. I'm for sure going to reread this, like, probably this year. Yeah. The final book that I read this month was Clap When You Land. I read it in an ebook copy, so I don't have a physical copy. Kind of wish that I did now, though. This book was amazing. Oh, it was amazing. It was stunningly written. Like, if you don't know about this book, it's written kind of in verse. So, like, the punctuation and, like, all the grammar and stuff is all, like, in verse. Which makes you slow down when you read. Like, obviously I read disgustingly fast. And that's okay. Like, I speed through books. This book made me slow down. I read every single word. There was absolutely no skimming on my part. Like, if you care about words at all, read this book, because it was, stunningly written. Yeah, I was wowed. I was a little bit nervous that I wouldn't find anything in this book to relate to, like having just knowing the topic matter of this book, the sisters, the loss of a parent, the severe like disparity in their like kind of statuses. Yeah, I was a little worried that I wouldn't relate to it, and that anything I would say would just kind of be like, yeah, you know. But honestly, from like the very beginning, I cared so much about the outcome of this book. Like the families, the girls, everybody. I have plans to read literally everything that this author has ever written. Huge fan. And so that's it. Those are my 17 books of January 2021. I don't think I'll be able to keep this up for the entire year. I set my book goal to be 52 just to set the bar a little lower. I didn't want to put pressure on, but this definitely gives me some wiggle room if I get into a massive reading slump later on down the line. If you've read any of these books, or you have thoughts or comments, or you just want to chat, please let me know. You can leave a comment or send me a message on Instagram. I would love to chat books with you. And that's it. Have a beautiful rest of your day.